At noon, the sun begins disappearing without making any sound. 20,000 years ago, nobody could search for an explanation. Our fictional survivor is Avon, the toolmaker who escaped the earthquake. She trusts patterns, but today the sky breaks every familiar pattern. The group has survived wounds, cold, smoke, hunger, and falling stone. None of those dangers ever switched off daylight itself. The first reaction will not be scientific curiosity. It will be the ancient instinct that something powerful is hunting them, and fear will spread faster than the eclipse shadow. This cautious reconstruction begins 3 days after the shelter collapse. The group is crossing a broad valley toward a new limestone ridge. They carry everything that survived the destroyed shelter. Avon walks beside Suri while Kellen scouts far ahead. Roken pulls a hide sled containing Ida and the heaviest supplies. The winter sun is bright enough to make the snow painful. Then Suri notices its circle no longer looks perfectly round. Everyone else blames cloud glare or tired eye. Avon watches the dark edge continue moving in one direction. Clouds change shape, but this shadow keeps a clean curve. Something enormous seems to be swallowing daylight piece by piece. Bird calls fade first across the open valley. Then the reindeer herd ahead becomes restless and tightly packed. Long shadows sharpen even though noon has barely passed. The light turns metallic, cold, and strangely colorless. Tova says the dead shelter has angered the sky. Roken believes smoke from a distant fire covers the sun. Ida says nothing because she has never seen this either. Uncertainty removes the authority from every experienced adult. People begin inventing explanations faster than evidence arrives. The most frightening explanation quickly becomes the most contagious. The group reaches a shallow ravine before the sun is half gone. Kellen chooses it as protection from wind and sudden panic. He orders the fire bundle open before darkness becomes complete. Avon notices the fire is not the group's only concern. Several adults want to burn food as an offering to the sky. Others demand they hide every flame from the unknown force. Two opposite plans grow from the same fear. Tova begins shouting that hesitation will doom everyone. Her certainty sounds convincing because nobody else has answers. Avon realizes confidence and knowledge are no longer the same thing. She asks Suri exactly when the dark bite first appeared. Suri marks its changing position using 3 stones. The stones reveal steady movement instead of random destruction. Avon scratches the same sequence onto a flat antler piece. The shadow is crossing the sun, not attacking from every side. That observation cannot explain what the shadow actually is, but it weakens the idea of a chaotic invisible predator. Avon tells Kalan the darkness may continue and then pass. Kalan does not understand, but he recognizes a testable pattern. He chooses to protect the group instead of feeding the panic. Kalan orders everyone into one tight circle around the supply. No one may leave the ravine until daylight returns or danger appears. Roken secures the hide sled so fear cannot scatter their food. Nara keeps the fire small, sheltered, and ready. Ida places Suri and the youngest children at the center. Avon continues marking each new stage on the antler. Tova watches the remaining sunlight shrink into a curved blade. Her fear turns into anger because the group rejected her command. Anger gives fear somewhere outside the body to attack. She accuses Avon of inviting the darkness by measuring it. Before anyone answers, the last bright crescent breaks into fragments. White beads flash around the black circle overhead. Then the final point of sunlight vanishes. Midday becomes night across the entire valley. Stars appear where blue sky existed moments earlier. A pale silver corona surrounds a perfectly black. Every person becomes silent at exactly the same moment. Even Tova loses the words she had been shouting. The horizon glows faintly in every direction around them. For several breaths, the world looks finished but remains standing. Then one wolf howls from somewhere beyond the ravine. Another answers from the opposite side of the valley. The group cannot see whether the animals are approaching. Roken raises his spear while Kalan protects the children. Tova suddenly runs toward the ridge to find open sky. Her escape instinct interprets movement as the only possible safety. Avon follows because shouting only makes Tova run faster. The ravine edge is coated with thin wind-polished ice. Tova slips and catches a root above a narrow drop. The eclipse has turned panic into a physical emergency. Avon lies flats the antler tool toward Tova. Tova grips it, but fear makes her pull violently. The root begins tearing from the frozen soil. Rokan arrives and anchors in by both ankles. Behind Rokan, forming a human chain. Together they pull Tova over the edge and onto stable ground. She begins crying before she can stand. Avon does not mention the accusation or demand an apology. Survival has made the argument suddenly smaller than before. Then a single blade of sunlight appears behind the black disk. The returning light is so bright that everyone turns away. The corona disappears while the valley remains dim and cold. Birds begin calling again before full daylight returns. The first sound feels like proof that time still moves. The solar crescent widens in the opposite direction. Avon's carved sequence now predicts every visible change. The group watches the shadow leave exactly as she hoped. Relief spreads, followed immediately by embarrassed silence. Nobody wants to remember what fear made them say or do. The sun returns, but the group's social has changed. Tova gives Avon the final piece of dried meat. It is not an apology in words, but everyone understands. Kalan asks Avon to preserve the eclipse sequence permanently. She adds the sun, the moving shadow, and the returning light. The object cannot predict another eclipse by itself. But it can preserve one crucial lesson for the group. A terrifying event can follow an order nobody yet understands. Observation does not remove fear, but it can limit fear's choices. The group resumes its journey under ordinary afternoon sunlight. Suri keeps the eclipse antler tied beside her blue-gray scarf. Archaeology cannot recover this exact eclipse story or conversation. Total solar eclipses would still have crossed prehistoric landscapes. Animal behavior can change abruptly during totality and returning light. Temperature, wind, brightness, and sound can all shift during an eclipse. No evidence proves how one Upper Paleolithic group interpreted such an event. The carvings and rational explanation in this story are reconstruction. What is psychologically credible is the struggle to explain uncertainty. Fear prefers confident stories even when evidence remains incomplete. Avon survives the darkness by measuring change instead of worshipping panic. Next time, the sky itself will fall in a storm of burning stone. A wolf bite 20,000 years ago could change everything. Not because wolves were monsters, but because wounds carried consequences. Our fictional hunter is Rokan, young, skilled, and impatient. That belief will fail before the morning hunt ends. His group lives beside a frozen river and limestone shelter. Winter has weakened the herds and sharpened every predator's hunger. Wolves follow the same animals that humans desperately need. But hunger can compress that distance into one terrible second. At dawn, Rokan discovers fresh hoofprints near the riverbank. Kel and Nora follow while Suri watches from camp. The hunters move quietly through reeds stiffened by frost. Then ravens rise suddenly beyond a low snowy ridge. Something is feeding on a carcass hidden below them. Instead, 3 wolves lift their heads from the carcass. The largest stands between the humans and the meat. Nobody moves while cold breath fills the silent space. But Rokan notices how much meat remains untouched. One risky thought overpowers every safer instinct inside him. He circles toward the carcass while the others whisper. The largest wolf turns, stiffens, and bares its teeth. Rokan stops, but he has already crossed the warning distance. The wolf charges across the snow faster than expected. Rokan thrusts his spear, but the point glances aside. Teeth close around his lower leg through the hide boot. He falls backward as the wolf twists and releases. Kellen strikes the ground, shouting and raising his cloak. Nara throws burning tinder from the hunter's carrying bundle. The wolves retreat, taking the carcass and safety with them. Rokan remains in the snow, staring at his torn boot. Blood spreads through the fur around his lower leg. The group must act before cold and panic make things worse. Kellen presses folded hide firmly over the bleeding wound. Nara checks whether Roken can move his foot and toes. He can move them, but every movement causes sharp pain. The bite has crushed tissue as well as broken skin. Wolf teeth carry dirt, saliva, and invisible microorganisms inward. Yet old scars have taught them that bites often worsen. They keep pressure steady until the bleeding begins slowing. Roken's face turns pale while his breathing becomes rapid. Kalan wraps him in an extra fur cloak. Warmth matters because shock and winter steal strength together. The hunters decide the carcass is no longer worth anything. They build a simple carrier from 2 spears and hide. Roken protests, ashamed that others must carry him. His pride now threatens him more than the retreating wolves. Nara tells him that walking could reopen the wound. 4 careful hands lift him above the frozen ground. Every step back toward camp sends pain through his leg. Blood stains the first wrapping before they reach shelter. Ida, the elder healer, removes the damaged boot slowly. 2 deep punctures appear beside several torn skin marks. The injury looks smaller than the pain it creates. Ida rinses away visible dirt with the cleanest water available. Roken grips a bone handle while the wound is examined. The group can only reduce contamination and support healing. Ida applies fresh absorbent material over the bite. Soft hide holds it in place without crushing the leg. She checks warmth and color in Roken's exposed toes. His foot remains warm, giving the group cautious relief. That evening, Roken develops swelling around the punctures. The skin tightens and every heartbeat becomes noticeable. He cannot sleep while shadows move beyond the shelter. Each distant howl returns him to the moment of attack. Fear transforms ordinary sounds into approaching teeth. Roken begins believing the wolf is waiting outside. Klan shows him tracks leading away from the camp. Facts weaken the fear but do not remove it. By morning, the bleeding has stopped completely. However, the leg is warmer and redder than before. Ida marks the edge of redness using a charcoal line. If the redness spreads, everyone will see the change. Hours later, the color moves beyond the charcoal. Now the wound is no longer only an injury. Roken's body is fighting something beneath the skin. Fever begins before the second night arrives. He shivers beside the fire despite wearing heavy fur. Nara gives him water in frequent small amounts. Food, warmth, rest, and hydration become his only medicine. The exact care shown here is cautious reconstruction. Some bites heal, while others become overwhelming infections. Another danger is possible but impossible for them to recognize. Rabies can spread through saliva from an infected animal. Not every wolf carries it, and this wolf may not. But prehistoric people could not identify that hidden risk. Roken watches his own behavior with growing terror. Every headache feels like the beginning of something fatal. His fear magnifies normal symptoms into imagined certainty. Ida forces him to describe what he actually feels. Pain, fever, thirst, exhaustion, but no strange behavior. Separating evidence from fear helps him remain calm. Through the night, the redness continues climbing upward. Ida reopens and cleans a trapped pocket of fluid. This intervention is fictional reconstruction, not documented proof. Pressure decreases, but Roken remains dangerously weak. The group gives him the warmest place near the hearth. Others surrender food portions so his body has energy. Suri carries melted snow and watches the fire. A child again becomes essential when adults begin failing. After another day, Roken's fever finally stops rising. The charcoal line remains visible above retreating redness. His immune system may be gaining control. Still, damaged tissue requires many weeks to recover. Roken cannot hunt while the group faces winter hunger. He shapes points from his sleeping place instead. His hands continue contributing while his leg remains useless. Slowly, the wound closes beneath clean coverings. A thick scar forms above the damaged muscle. Roken eventually stands using a wooden staff. His first steps are painful, uneven, and humiliating. But each step proves the bite did not decide everything. Archaeology rarely preserves the story of one animal bite. Ancient bones can show trauma, healing, and long survival. Soft tissue wounds usually disappear from the record. So Roken's exact treatment remains an informed human story. The strongest lesson is not that wolves were evil. Humans and wolves were competing survivors in the same winter. Roken survives through luck, immunity, care, and cooperation. Without the group, the bite would become a sentence. With them, it becomes a scar and a warning. Next time, a frozen river will collapse beneath two hunters. 20,000 years ago, one meal could disable everyone. The danger might taste smoky, rich, and completely ordinary. Our fictional food keeper Tova is careful, respected, exhausted. Today, hunger pressures her to ignore one warning sign. By night, the weakest person may become the strongest. Food poisoning drains water, strength, judgment, and caregiving ability. This reconstruction begins after Kalan survives the deadly whiteout. The storm traps everyone beneath their limestone winter shelter. Hunting becomes impossible, and all fresh meat has vanished. Only preserved reindeer bundles remain beside the rear wall. Thin strips were dried and exposed to hearth smoke. Tova counts bundles while hungry faces watch every movement. One package feels softer beneath its stretched hide covering. Meltwater entered during storms and dampened the lower strips. The meat froze again, hiding how long moisture remained. Tova opens one bundle and notices a faint odor. Kalan smells something strange while Nara studies gray edges. Nobody understands the bacteria, toxins, or invisible contamination involved. Everyone understands that discarding food also brings serious danger. Without this meat, children may sleep hungry for nights. Eating it means gambling against an unseen deadly threat. One hunter insists strong fire can make anything safe. Another remembers illness after eating one old animal carcass. Tova must choose while the violent storm continues outside. She removes the dampest pieces and saves the rest. But contamination does not always respect any visible boundary. The remaining strips cook across hot stones beside fire. Fat spits, smoke rises, and suspicious odors weaken slowly. Heat kills many germs, but uneven cooking remains uncertain. The camp watches meat darken and believes danger leaves. Tova tastes one tiny piece and waits several minutes. Nothing happens because many foodborne illnesses need more time. The cooked strips are divided among nearly everyone there. Suri refuses hers because the bitter taste feels wrong. One elder eats 2 bites, then gives his away. Others gently laugh at Suri's unusually stubborn refusal today. No one knows her refusal may soon protect everyone. Several calm hours pass while people work and talk. Then Kellen stops speaking and clutches his abdomen tightly. A sharp cramp folds his body forward without warning. Across camp, Nara suddenly becomes pale and deeply nauseated. Tova feels the same twisting pain moments later herself. The first person becomes sick outside the sleeping area. Another falls ill before caregivers replace the dirty covering. Within 1 hour, half the camp lies down weakly. By midnight, nearly everyone eating that meat becomes ill. Symptoms vary because bodies and causes never behave identically. Some vomitus, develop diarrhea, cramps, fever, and weakness. The exact germ remains unknowable within this fictional outbreak. But the camp's immediate enemy quickly becomes severe dehydration. Water leaves through vomiting, diarrhea, sweat, and rapid breathing. Important dissolved salts leave the body alongside that water. Thirst grows intense, but drinking quickly triggers more sickness. Tova tries standing and nearly collapses from sudden dizziness. Her mouth feels dry and urination has nearly stopped. Modern medicine recognizes these as dangerous dehydration warning signs. The camp only recognizes frightening patterns remembered from experience. The storm still blocks access to the nearest stream. Only 2 small water containers remain beside the hearth. Most adults are now too weak to collect more. Suri watches powerful hunters unable to lift their heads. The ignored child suddenly becomes the healthiest person present. Older Ida also ate very little of the meat. She can still walk, though her hands shake badly. Ida sends Suri toward the cleanest, untouched snowdrift outside. They melt snow near fire instead of eating ice. Melting snow consumes fuel, another resource already running low. Suri feeds small branches while Ida watches the flame. They offer tiny, frequent sips instead of large amounts. Some keep water down, others immediately lose it again. No prehistoric rehydration recipe is documented for this group. Warm, thin broth appears as another cautious reconstruction here. Caregivers separate drinking water from the distant waste area. They move soiled hides downhill, away from shelter entrances. This cannot stop everything, but may reduce additional contamination. Suri marks each person who successfully drinks some water. Her simple system prevents quiet patience from being forgotten. Tova awakens and ceases performing her former duty. Guilt hurts almost as sharply as her stomach cramps. She believes her decision endangered everyone who trusted her. Nara explains hunger made the choice difficult, not careless. That reassurance matters because shame can destroy useful judgment. Together they identify patients still alert enough for drinking. Kellen responds slowly but swallows several small sips successfully. One elder barely opens his eyes or drinks properly. His sunken face and stillness terrify the entire shelter. Without intravenous fluids, severe dehydration leaves few available options. Ida keeps him warm and moistens his mouth carefully. No one knows whether he will survive until morning. Outside, the violent winter storm finally begins weakening noticeably. Suri and one recovering hunter reach water at dawn. They break thin ice and fill hide-lined containers carefully. Every returning step carries water more valuable than meat. Fresh water allows repeated small drinks throughout the morning. Kalan steadies while Nara's fever finally begins falling slowly. Tova remains weak but can sit without collapsing now. The elder never wakes when sunlight enters the shelter. His empty place turns dinner into permanent communal memory. Nobody speaks while Tova removes every remaining meat bundle. They burn questionable scraps rather than risk renewed illness. The choice wastes calories but protects all remaining survivors. Over several days, most patients gradually regain their strength. Diarrhea stops quickly for some and lingers for others. Several survivors remain exhausted after stomach symptoms disappear completely. Foodborne illness can cause consequences beyond one terrible night. Tova redesigns how camp stores and checks preserved meat. Damp bundles are separated, raised, and inspected more often. These exact practices are fictional, but preservation required planning. Archaeology rarely proves when one specific meat bundle spoiled. Microbes, odors, vomit, and soft containers usually disappear entirely. Animal bones, hearths, tools, and activity areas survive better. Lazarus researchers proposed zones for smoking and drying meat. That older evidence does not document Tova's exact method. Modern science explains symptoms beginning hours or days later. It also identifies dehydration as the most immediate danger. Safe food, clean water, and cooperation remain interconnected systems. Tova survives because others replace work she cannot perform. The camp survives because she refuses one suspicious bite. 20,000 years ago, caution could equal remarkable courage. Next, a wolf bite will threaten Kellen's life again.
An earthquake could erase your only shelter in 10 seconds. The first thing lost would not be food or fire. There would be certainty about where safety still existed. The fictional survivor is Avon, a patient young toolmaker. Notices tiny sounds that louder people usually ignore. Tonight, listening will matter more than physical strength. There are no engineers, radios, helmets, or rescue machines. Only stone tools, memory, and coordinated hands. One wrong stone could trigger a second deadly collapse. This reconstruction begins during the coldest part of winter. Avon's group has used the shelter for 3 winters. Every sleeping place, crack, and fire pit feels permanent. Ann and Rokan are still returning from an evening hunt. Lesson repairs clothing while Suri sorts dry twigs. He prepares broth beside a low, carefully ventilated fire. Then Water's stone bowl begins trembling by itself. Several hanging bone tools tap softly against the wall. Uri asks whether something is walking above the shelter. Arven places her palm against the ground and feels vibration. Movement stops before anyone decides what it means. The first violent jolt throws everyone away from the hearth. Broth embers, tools, and sleeping hides slide across stone. Raven hears cracking above the roar of moving rock. Suri beneath a low natural stone arch. Fire reaches Ida seconds before the rear wall collapses. The entrance ceiling breaks into blocks larger than people. Light shrinks to a thin line, then disappears completely. The hearth dies beneath dust and scattered earth. For several seconds, nobody hears anything but stone. Then the earthquake stops, leaving a more frightening silence. Haven cannot see her own beside her face. The ears ring, and every breath tastes like powdered stone. He calls names instead of asking whether everyone is safe. He answers beneath the arch, frightened but uninjured. Ara answers from somewhere beyond a new wall of rubble. Weakly beside her, but Tova remains silent. Line forces everyone to stop shouting at once. Silence allows one faint scraping sound to become noticeable. Answers faintly from beneath fallen hides. But falling rubble has divided them. Aside, Kellen and Rokan see a dust cloud replace the shelter. They run forward until stones continue falling from above. Rokan wants to dig directly through the former entrance, but notices the entire slope is still shedding debris. Digging below it could bury both rescuers before they begin. They retreat and examine the cliff from safer ground. The thin crack near the side releases pale dust outward. That moving dust's air is escaping from inside. Khan strikes the rock 3 times with his spear shaft. The pause, 3 faint answers return from darkness. Inside, Evan realizes the tapping is not another collapse. 3 times using a heavy antler tool. The repeated rhythm becomes their first connection to outside. Panic weakens when the group knows they have been found. But the main entrance buried beneath enormous blocks. Logan begins digging there despite Kellen's warnings. Lab above him shifts after only a few stones move. Khan pulls him backward before the slab crashes down. The obvious route has become the most dangerous route. They must find another way before Code reaches the trapped group. Inside, dust begins settling, revealing a second urgent problem. The sealed shelter is growing colder without its central fire. Their water bowl shattered during the first violent jolt. Eyes outside, but tons of rock block every direct path. Evan feels a faint cold draft near the rear sleeping wall. Places a pinch of fine ash beside the crack. The ash moves sideways, proving air reaches another space. Ara remembers a shallow animal passage behind old bedding. The earthquake may have opened it or crushed it completely. Orvin chooses to investigate before the next aftershock. The passage is too narrow for everyone to enter together. Orvin ties cord around her waist before crawling inside. Holds the other end and counts every arm length pulled. The tunnel bends downward beneath newly fractured stone. At times, loose gravel begins sliding around her elbows. She stops moving whenever the roof produces a new click. Far-bent cold air touches her dust-covered face. Then she hears Kalan's 3 knocks much louder than before. The side fissure and animal passage nearly meet underground. Only a wall of packstone separates them now. Taps once, then twice, establishing a new signal. Answers the same pattern from the opposite side. They cannot share words, but rhythm can coordinate action. Listens while Kalan strikes each possible removal stone. One stone sounds hollow and carries air around its edge. Okan wants to pull it immediately with both hands. Khan first wedges wooden poles beneath neighboring rocks. Inside, Evan clears loose gravel below the same block. The sides pause when another aftershock begins. braced stones hold while dust pours through the crack. The shaking stops, they resume one movement at a time. Reverse the hollow stone outward by a finger's width. Fresh air rushes through the opening toward Avon. She sends 3 rapid knocks to confirm the root works. The opening is still too small for a human body. They widen the lower edge instead of weakening the roof. Every removed stone is carried away rather than piled nearby. Lori squeezes through first and reaches the rescuers outside. Leader Tova and Nara follow through person at a time. Avon stays inside until every other person is clear. The original entrance collapses inward for the second time. The pressure wave extinguishes the tiny ember they had recovered. Avon dives into the animal passage as the floor tilts. Suri feels the guide cord suddenly pull tight outside. Van Rokan pull only after receiving Avon's signal. 2 tugs travel through the cord from beneath the rock. They pull while Avon crawls and falling gravel fills the tunnel. A hand appears just before the passage partially collapses. Rokan drags her clear and the opening seals behind her legs. The whole group stands outside as their shelter disappears forever. Archaeology cannot preserve this exact rescue or tapping system. Rockfalls can seal cave entrances and permanently change access. Lower Cave's entrance was closed by prehistoric rockfall events. Earthquake shaking can also trigger or prepare massive rock failures. No evidence proves an earthquake buried Avon's fictional camp. Bracing tapping, airflow testing, and rescue route are reconstruction. The psychological principle is simpler and more widely recognizable. Shared rhythm turns isolated fear into coordinated action. They survive because nobody mistakes urgency for reckless speed. Next time, the midday sun will vanish without warning.
Smoke could protect a prehistoric camp and quietly poison it. The danger was not always visible flames or burning skin. Sometimes the first warning was only a strange headache. Our fictional survivor is Suri, the youngest person in camp. Adults often ignore children when fear and exhaustion take control. Tonight, that habit will nearly cost every person inside. There are no alarms, oxygen masks, or emergency teams. Only airflow observation, fire knowledge, and one child's decision. The fire will remain small while the danger becomes enormous. This cautious reconstruction begins during a violent winter storm. Wind drives snow directly through the shelter's wide entrance. Every gust steals warmth from children, elders, and injured hunters. Kellen hangs thick hides across most of the opening. A narrow gap remains near the ground for fresh air. At first, the barrier makes the shelter immediately warmer. Snow stops entering, and the fire burns steadily near center. But the storm shifts and presses the lower gap closed. Nobody notices because everyone is focused on surviving the cold. The shelter becomes warmer, quieter, and increasingly sealed. Comfort hides the first change in the air around them. Tova adds wood stored near the damp rear wall. The branches look dry outside but remain wet underneath. Wet fuel produces more smoke and less useful heat. The smoke rises, spreads, and meets the cold stone ceiling. Normally, moving air would carry much of it outside. Tonight, the blocked entrance changes the shelter's circulation. Smoke folds downward along the walls instead of escaping. Fine particles irritate eyes, throats, and breathing passages. Combustion also creates gases nobody there can see. One of those gases can interfere with oxygen-reaching tissues. Carbon monoxide has no useful color, smell, or warning taste. Smoke may reveal poor ventilation without revealing every danger. Ida begins coughing while dividing the final evening meal. Kellen blames the damp branches and moves closer to warmth. Roken feels pressure building behind his eyes. Nara becomes unusually tired before finishing her food. Tova complains that the storm has made everyone miserable. Each symptom has an ordinary explanation by itself. Together, they form a pattern nobody has been taught to name. Suri watches the adults become quieter around the hearth. She notices the smoke layer has dropped below Kalan's head. When she stands, her eyes sting more sharply. When she crouches, breathing feels slightly easier. She repeats the movement to test what she is feeling. The adults interpret her behavior as restless, childish play. Then Roken drops a stone cup without reacting quickly. His coordination has become slower than his own awareness. Kellen tries to joke but forgets what he was saying. Nara cannot keep her eyes open despite Suri calling her. The shelter's comfortable warmth now feels unnaturally sleepy. Sleep feels reasonable because the entire group is exhausted. But several people becoming confused together is different. Suri crawls toward the entrance hides and feels no draft. The small ventilation gap has vanished beneath packed snow. She tries pulling one hide aside, but its fastening holds. Her small hands cannot release the frozen leather knot. She calls Kellen, but he answers without standing. Ida tells Suri to lie down and conserve warmth. Obedience has kept Suri safe through many winter dangers. Tonight, obedience and survival begin pointing opposite ways. Suri remembers smoke always moving toward the entrance before. Now it circles beneath the ceiling and returns inward. She remembers Nara saying wind must feed every healthy fire. Yet this flame has become orange, weak, and strangely lazy. Suri grabs the sharp flint scraper beside Tova's bedding. She cuts the hide fastening instead of untying it. The entrance covering drops as wind explodes into the shelter. Snow sparks and angry voices fill the sudden confusion. The fire bends sideways and smoke finally begins moving outward. Fresh air enters low while hot smoke escapes above it. Kalan tries standing, then collapses onto one knee. Suri screams until Roken crawls toward the opening. The cold air shocks him into slightly clearer awareness. He pulls Nara by her fur cloak across the floor. Suri wakes Ida by pressing snow against her hands. Tova crawls instead of walking through the thickest smoke. Kellen pushes the damp smoking branch away from the hearth. Roken covers the remaining coals with loose earth and ash. The shelter darkens, but the smoke source finally weakens. Everyone must now choose cold air over dangerous warmth. Outside, the storm cuts through their clothing immediately. Remaining inside still feels easier to several confused adults. Suri blocks the entrance and refuses to let them return. Roken and Kellen guide everyone behind a nearby stone wall. Fresh air begins replacing the contaminated air in their lungs. Headaches remain because recovery is not instantaneous. Nara vomits once, then becomes frightened by her weakness. Ida watches breathing, awareness, and ability to answer questions. They possess no way to measure the invisible gas exposure. Their only available treatment is distance, air, warmth, and time. The group builds a second fire outside the shelter entrance. Only dry wood is selected from the protected storage bundle. Wind carries the new smoke safely away from the people. Dry hides surround Nara against the storm. Warm broth is prepared only after everyone becomes more alert. Suri receives the first cup because her hands are shaking. Kellen realizes the child he dismissed recognized the path and first hunts. He thanks her without pretending the rescue was accidental. Suri begins crying only after the danger is past. Fear often arrives late when action is finally no longer needed. Morning reveals why the air stopped moving during the night. The storm reversed direction and sealed the lowest opening. The hide curtain then trapped warm, smoky air beneath stone. The group begins redesigning the entire sleeping area. The hearth moves closer to the entrance where smoke escapes faster. Sleeping places move deeper but remain below the main smoke path. A permanent upper opening is left above the entrance hides. A second low gap is protected from drifting snow with stones. Only dry fuel remains beside the hearth for nighttime use. Someone will remain awake whenever the storm changes direction. Archaeologists cannot reconstruct one exact smoke emergency like this. However, Paleolithic shelters often contain evidence of repeated hearth use. Smoke simulations show hearth position and cave shape strongly affect exposure. Opening height, season, and airflow can change where smoke accumulates. Experiments also show many caves cannot naturally clear continuous smoke. Modern medicine links carbon monoxide with headache, dizziness, and confusion. Suri's rescue sequence remains fictional rather than archaeological fact. The broader danger of enclosed fire is physically real. The group survives because one person questions a comfortable explanation. Next time, an earthquake will collapse the shelter around them. 20,000 years ago, snow could erase you within minutes. Not your body first, but every clue leading safely home. Our fictional hunter Kalan is the group's most confident tracker. He reads grass, hoofprints, wind, and distant animal calls carefully. Today, the landscape will erase every language Kalan understands completely. No maps, radios, forecast, or lights exist after sunset there. Only memory, clothing, fire, shelter, and searching companions remain behind. One wrong choice wastes heat his body cannot replace quickly. The most dangerous moment may feel strangely peaceful and safe. This reconstruction begins near the end of the glacial maximum. Kalan's group shelters beneath limestone overlooking the frozen open steppe. Food remains scarce after several days of unsuccessful hunting attempts. Fresh reindeer tracks appear before the morning sky fully brightens. Kalan follows them alongside two experienced hunters from his group. Nara warns Kalan that the wind is beginning to change. He notices yet believes the hunt will remain short today. 3 hunters leave carrying spears, hides, and basic fire-making tools. For hours, hoofprints lead them across hard wind-polished snowfields steadily. One reindeer separates and descends into a shallow nearby valley. The hunters divide, hoping to guide it toward their ambush. Kalan circles alone beside a long exposed limestone wall. The first snowflakes arrive so lightly he barely notices them. Within minutes, the opposite ridge starts fading into gray mist. Wind lifts loose snow and throws it horizontally across everything. Kalan turns back, but his companions have already disappeared completely. The world contracts into a white circle several steps wide. He shouts their names, but wind tears his voice apart. Kalan chooses direction using what only feels like remembered terrain. Humans naturally drift when all visual reference points disappear completely. Kalan walks faster, trying to escape uncertainty through constant movement. Each step creates heat while carrying him farther from camp. He finds tracks and follows them with sudden hopeful relief. Then he realizes those tracks belong to his own boots. He has unknowingly completed one enormous circle through the storm. Panic strikes Kalan harder than the cold surrounding him outside. His breathing accelerates, while thoughts become narrow and painfully repetitive. Kalan forces himself to kneel behind a low protective stone. Stopping feels like surrender, but uncontrolled wandering remains far worse. He checks everything still attached across his belt and shoulders. Flint, pyrite, dry fiber, cord, fold hide, and spear remain. The exact equipment is reconstructed, though each item remains plausible. He also carries a small piece of fat-rich dried meat. Kalan turns from the wind and studies the moving snow. The slope below descends toward a narrow, frozen stream channel. Cold air settles in low ground, making that route dangerous. Higher ground offers visibility but exposes him to stronger winds. Kalan chooses a shallow depression beside the limestone wall nearby. His first goal is simply surviving long enough for rescue. He clears loose snow until frozen earth becomes visible underneath. Then he lays folded hide between himself and frozen ground. Direct contact with frozen soil would steal heat continuously there. He stacks snow and stones into a low curved windbreak. He pulls fur layers tightly around his neck and waist. Melting snow starts dampening the outside of his clothing layers. Kalan brushes snow away before it can melt deeper inside. His fingers are becoming clumsy, numb, and painfully stiff already. Now he attempts the most important uncertain, making fire. Flint strikes pyrite, producing sparks that vanish almost immediately outside. The wind steals one ember before he can feed it. He shields the tinder with his body and tries again. Repeated failures consume strength, time, and feeling in his hands. One spark finally catches deep inside the dark tinder bundle. Kalan breathes gently, resisting the urge to blow too hard. A faint orange glow becomes one fragile crawling flame. Small twigs catch, then thicker fuel begins producing steady heat. Fire transforms the shelter from hiding place into visible signal. But smoke disappears quickly into the white air above him. Back at camp, Kalan's companions return without him that evening. Nara organizes a search while some daylight still remains outside. They carry hides, burning material, spears, and long cords together. Searchers travel in pairs so nobody else disappears alone there. They mark their route using dark branches pressed into snow. Even those markers begin vanishing beneath fresh accumulations soon afterward. Meanwhile, Kellan's shivering becomes violent, exhausting, and completely uncontrollable now. Shivering generates warmth, but burns energy at a frightening rate. He eats the small meat portion despite feeling badly nauseated. Darkness arrives without any visible sunset behind the violent storm. Kellan adds fuel carefully, terrified of exhausting it too quickly. He warms his torso instead of pressing hands into flame. His feet hurt, then gradually become disturbingly numb and heavy. He refuses removing his boots to inspect them outside shelter. Exposed skin could freeze even faster within the blowing wind. Hours pass while firelight and white darkness alternate before him. Then Kellan notices something that feels deceptively like improvement happening. His violent shivering slows down and eventually stops completely now. He smiles weakly, believing his body has finally become warmer. But severe cooling can stop shivering when energy starts failing. His thoughts soften and the storm suddenly feels less threatening. He imagines hearing his mother's voice beyond the windbreak nearby. Kellan begins rising, convinced camp waits only steps away outside. Then he sees his bone pendant lying beside the fire. It reminds him of Nara's warning before leaving the camp. He grips the pendant and crawls back beneath protective hide. Far away, searchers discover where the hunter's trail divided earlier. One branch leads campward, another disappears completely into whiteness nearby. Nara notices a repeating curve within Kellan's partly buried footprints. The circle reveals panic but also his last clear position. Searchers spread within shouting distance and move against the wind. Then someone smells smoke before anybody can see its source. They follow the scent toward a sheltered limestone depression nearby. Kellan barely reacts when familiar silhouettes enter the firelight suddenly. The group replaces damp outer coverings with dry protective hides. They insulate him below and warm his torso very gradually. Kellan is handled carefully because deep cold makes movement dangerous. Nobody celebrates yet, finding him is only the first victory. They wait until his awareness and mild shivering begin returning. Then they carry him on a hide stretcher toward camp. By morning, the storm weakens and the landscape reappears slowly. Kellan survives, though several toes remain painful for many weeks. Archaeology cannot identify one specific prehistoric whiteout survival protocol confidently. Humans occupied extremely cold environments long before Kellan's fictional story. Paleolithic needles and hide tools support sophisticated clothing production methods. Hearths, shelters planning, and cooperation made cold landscapes survivable together. Flint and pyrite firemaking is plausible, not proven for Kellan's exact group. Modern hypothermia science explains shivering, confusion, and dangerous calm clearly. Bones may preserve survival, but rarely the choices behind it. Kellan survives because he stops wandering before panic spends everything. He also survives because his group enters the storm searching. In the Ice Age, cooperation may have been strongest shelter. Next time, spoiled meat threatens an entire prehistoric camp together.
20,000 years ago, a broken leg was never just painful. It could erase your future before the sun went down. Our fictional hunter is called Arn, young, fast, and overconfident. This morning, he believes his strongest weapon is his own body. By nightfall, that body may become an impossible burden. There are no hospitals, x-rays, painkillers, or emergency vehicles. There is only knowledge, luck, and the patience of others. And the worst danger may not be the broken bone. It may be what happens when your group must choose. Do they carry you home or keep moving without you? Arn follows fresh hoofprints across a cold limestone valley. His hunting party needs meat before the next hard freeze. Every empty hand means less food for children and elders. Then Arn spots movement beyond a narrow rocky ledge. He signals silently, certain the animal cannot escape him. One careful step becomes one step too far. Loose gravel rolls beneath his heel like tiny marbles. His balance vanishes before his mind understands the danger. Arn falls, strikes the slope, and tumbles behind the rocks. The valley answers with one short, unforgettable cracking sound. For several seconds, Arn feels almost nothing at all. Then pain floods upward, hot, sharp, and completely overwhelming. His lower leg bends where no leg should ever bend. He tries to rise, but the world flashes white. Now the hunt is over and survival has begun. His companions hear him, but reaching him costs precious time. The wounded animal is escaping, and daylight is already fading. One hunter watches the tracks, another watches Aron's face. Their decision takes seconds, but changes every life involved. They abandon the hunt and climb down toward him. First, they stop Aron from twisting the injured leg. Movement could worsen the damage and tear hidden tissue. They check for heavy bleeding, but find none outside. Aron shakes violently, partly from cold, partly from shock. His friends wrap him in fur before moving anything. They speak calmly because panic spreads faster than fire. One companion grips Aron's hand during every painful adjustment. Another studies the slope and plans the safest route home. Nobody knows whether Aron will survive the journey. 2 straight branches are cut from a nearby young tree. Soft moss and folded hide become rough protective padding. The branches are placed beside the leg, not directly underneath. Leather strips hold everything still without crushing the swollen limb. This splint is a cautious reconstruction, not proven certainty. But immobilization would give Aron his best possible chance. The group builds a carrier from poles and animal hide. 4 people lift together while Aron bites down on leather. Every uneven step sends pain through his entire body. And every pause steals warmth from the approaching evening. A shadow moves across the ridge above the exhausted group. Predators notice weakness, blood scent, and people moving slowly. The hunters raise spears while continuing toward the distant shelter. Aron cannot fight, run, or even hide by himself. For the fuckers, his survival belongs completely to others. They reach the cave just as freezing rain begins. Inside, firelight reveals swelling spreading around the fracture. The healer does not possess magic, only experience and observation. She checks warmth, color, feeling, and movement in Aron's foot. The bindings are loosened slightly as the swelling increases. More moss is added to prevent rubbing and skin damage. Aron receives warm broth, water, and tiny pieces of meat. Pain steals his appetite, but healing demands enormous energy. That first night feels longer than an entire winter. Every time Aron sleeps, sudden pain drags him awake. He fears the bone will pierce through his skin. He fears fever, infection, predators, and becoming useless forever. But his deepest fear is visible in everyone's silence. How long can the group afford to protect him? Morning brings no miracle, only swelling and exhaustion. The hunters leave again, now carrying 1 fewer spear. Someone must remain behind to keep Aron warm and hydrated. That choice reduces the food gathered for everyone else. Days pass measured by firewood, meals, and waves of pain. The leg stays elevated on bundled hides whenever possible. The splint is checked repeatedly as swelling slowly changes. Too loose and the bones move, too tight, circulation suffered. Nobody can see whether the broken ends are properly aligned. Aron's body begins building a temporary bridge around the fracture. Soft repair tissue gradually becomes a harder protective callus. This process takes weeks, not a dramatic single night. Meanwhile, Aron loses muscle because he cannot walk or hunt. His companions bring stones so he can shape new spear points. Work gives Aron usefulness to distraction and a reason to endure. He teaches a child how to strike flakes safely. The injured hunter slowly becomes a teacher beside the fire. His value changes, but it does not disappear. That psychological shift may be as important as the splint. After several weeks, the pain becomes duller and less constant. Then comes a dangerous temptation, trying to stand too early. Aron grabs a wooden staff and pushes himself upright. His healthy leg trembles beneath his suddenly reduced strength. The injured foot touches earth and pain explodes again. He collapses safely into waiting arms, furious with himself. Recovery is not a straight path, it advances and retreats. Several more days pass before the next careful attempt. This time, 2 companions support his shoulders from both sides. Aron takes one uneven step, then another, then stops. The entire cave reacts as if a great hunt succeeded. Walking returns slowly, but the old speed does not. The leg heals slightly shortened and angled from its original line. Arn develops a limp that may follow him forever. Yet a limp is evidence of something extraordinary, survival. Months later, Arn can gather plants and set small traps. He no longer leads chases across dangerous stone ridges. Instead, he repairs tools and studies animal movement near camp. The accident reshapes his role, not simply his skeleton. Archaeologists sometimes find ancient bones that healed after severe trauma. Those bones survive, although not every detail of treatment. Some injured prehistoric people lived for years with serious impairments. That survival strongly suggests support and shared resources. Even more remarkably, a survived limb amputation. That operation occurred about 31,000 years ago. The individual lived several more years after the procedure. But Arn's exact splint, healer, and recovery remain informed reconstruction. Science must separate what bones reveal from what stories imagine. A broken leg 20,000 years ago was a social emergency. Your body needed time, but time had to be donated. Food, warmth, protection, and patience became prehistoric medicine. The greatest treatment may have been refusing to leave someone behind. Because before hospitals existed, survival sometimes began with loyalty.
A tiny cut could prove fatal 20 millennia ago. Not from weakness, but because dangerous bacteria remained invisible. Our fictional survivor Nara is a skilled young flint worker. She lacks antibiotics, antiseptics, stitches, and any germ theory. Only immunity and shared knowledge stand between life and death. At first, Nara's injury looks almost disappointingly small indeed. Then hidden changes make everyone fear the worst outcome. Because wounds threaten not only the person carrying them. They delay migration, divide entire groups. This cautious reconstruction begins during one bitter winter morning. Nara's camp prepares meat before the coming storm arrives. Every dried strip may decide who survives until spring. Nara shapes a razor-sharp flake beside a stone core. Its edge is finer than many modern metal tools. She strikes again while watching hunters crossing the valley. Her attention shifts away for less than one heartbeat. The flint slips, cutting deeply across her left forearm. For one strange second, Nara feels pressure, not pain. Then blood runs quickly across her right hand. Conversation stops as everyone turns toward her sudden movement. The wound looks short, but depth matters far more. Nara still moves every finger, offering everyone cautious hope. A companion presses folded hide firmly against the wound. Nara looks away, breathing rapidly as pain finally arrives. They maintain steady pressure without repeatedly lifting the covering. Her arm stays raised while Nara sits near ground. Slowly, the red stain stops spreading across the hide. If a major vessel ruptured, her story might end. But bleeding slows, giving everyone one narrow second chance. We cannot know exactly how such wounds were treated. The group chooses the clearest available water near camp. It is not sterile, but visible grit needs removal. Water carries tiny stone fragments away from injured skin. They lack germ theory, yet experience can guide behavior. Nara clenches her jaw while others examine the injury. The edges separate whenever she bends wrist or elbow. A clean dry pad covers the damaged forearm carefully. Soft hide wraps firmly around it without crushing pressure. The healer checks Nara's fingers for warmth and color. By evening, bleeding stops and confidence begins returning slowly. Nara assumes danger has ended because pain feels quieter. But silent wounds do not always mean true safety. The camp needs workers, and Nara hates seeming helpless. At sunrise, she resumes scraping hides beside everyone else. Repeated motion pulls the fragile wound edges apart again. The wrapping becomes damp, dirty, and rubbed against remains. Microscopic invaders now find easier entry beneath her skin. Bacteria multiply within warmth, moisture, and damaged tissue quickly. Nara cannot see invasion, but her immune system can. Defensive cells rush toward wounds through widening blood vessels. Skin becomes red as blow rises around it. Swelling follows, making the wrapping feel unexpectedly tight now. The injured area grows warmer than surrounding healthy skin. By night, each heartbeat brings deep throbbing pain again. Nara hides her arm beneath fur and says nothing. Admitting weakness feels more frightening than the wound itself. Her mind treats pain like an enemy worth ignoring. But pain carries information, and its message grows louder. She sleeps badly, sweating beside a dying campfire nearby. Morning reveals stiffness spreading from wrist toward elbow slowly. Removing the covering reveals cloudy fluid staining the pad. Fever rises as her whole body joins the fight. She shivers violently despite sitting close beside bright flames. Now everyone understands this is no ordinary small cut. The elder studies Nara's face, breathing, wound, and alertness. Some want moving camp before the storm traps them. Others refuse, forcing Nara onward while fever weakens her. Infection may remain local or spread throughout the body. No one can know which future has already begun. Survival depends partly on immunity and unpredictable luck too. It also depends on water, calories, warmth, and rest. Every drink requires carrying while someone gathers extra firewood. Every meal for Nara reduces another person's winter reserve. Prehistoric healthcare becomes a chain of difficult social decisions. The healer unwraps Nara's arm beneath bright firelight again. No magical plant can guarantee defeating such an infection. The wound is rinsed cautiously and protected from dirt. Swollen tissue traps painful pressure beneath the closing surface. If pressure remains, infection may continue spreading farther upward. Opening the trapped pocket might help, but risks harm. This exact procedure is informed reconstruction, never archaeological proof. Nara understands waiting may also become equally dangerous now. She grips a companion's hand and silently nods once. The healer intervenes carefully using one sharp stone flake. Cloudy fluid escapes, reducing pressure inside the swollen wound. The area is rinsed, then covered with fresh material. Nara remains conscious, but exhaustion pulls her towards sleep. That night, fever climbs higher before gradually falling again. She dreams the camp leaves while she cannot stand. Awakening, she finds still feeding the fire nearby. A child places Nara's bone near her hand. Hunters return late carrying less meat than needed today. An elder gives Nara part of his own portion. This medicine consists of loyalty, calories, warmth, and time. At dawn, Nara's eyes clear and violent shaking slows. That improvement encourages everyone, but victory remains uncertain still. For days, they watch, clean, and rewrap her wound. Redness slowly retreats instead of climbing farther up arm. New tissue begins filling gaps beneath damaged skin gradually. A thick, uneven scar forms across Nara's left forearm. Nara survives, though her grip stays weak for weeks. She practices small tools before lifting heavier stone cores. Companions adjust tasks so work never reopens the wound. Eventually, Nara shapes another flake using slower movements safely. The accident changes habits without ending her usefulness entirely. Soft tissue rarely survives long enough for archaeological examination. If infection reaches bone, detectable changes may remain afterward. Healed injuries show prehistoric people survived serious trauma sometime. One Borneo individual survived lower leg amputation long before Nara. That operation occurred roughly 31,000 years ago there. The individual lived years afterward, implying sustained community care. Neanderthal dental calculus preserved traces of bitter plants too. Those traces may reflect diet or possible self-medication only. Evidence shows possibilities. Reconstruction turns them into human stories. We cannot know Nara's exact bandage, healer, or scar. But survival clearly demanded more than toughness alone ever. It required immunity, experience, resources, and extraordinary luck together. Most importantly, people refused to abandon Nara during illness. One tiny cut reveals prehistoric cooperation's enormous life-saving power. Next, a whiteout separates one hunter from everyone else. Falling through ice 20,000 years ago began with one breath. Cold water could steal control before it stole body heat. Our fictional survivors are Cullen and Roken, experienced winter hunters. They understand snow, wind, animals, fire, and dangerous terrain. But clear ice can hide weaknesses no tracker can easily reach. There are no ropes, rescue dry suits, or hospitals. Only a wooden pole, hide clothing, and nearby companions. One hunter will fall, and the second must choose instantly. Rush forward, run for help, or risk becoming another victim. This cautious reconstruction begins during a hard winter thaw. The river has carried the group safely for many weeks. Its flat surface offers an easier route than deep snow. That familiarity makes the frozen water feel almost permanent. Yet warmer afternoons have begun weakening its edges. Dark patches appear where the current moves fastest below. Nara warns everyone to cross near the familiar stone markers. Kellan agrees, but Rokan sees fresh reindeer tracks downstream. The tracks lead toward a narrow bend hidden by reed. A trapped animal could feed the camp for several days. Hunger turns uncertain ice into an acceptable-looking gamble. Kellan carries a long pole and tests each step ahead. Rokan follows several body lengths behind him. They avoid reeds, dark ice, and snow-covered depressions. For a while, every tappen's a reassuring, solid sound. Then they discover blood and disturbed snow near the bend. A reindeer has escaped, but part of its antler remains. Rokan steps sideways to examine the broken antler. Kellan raises one hand, warning him to stop. A dull crack travels beneath both hunters like thunder. The river surface suddenly changes from road to trap. Rokan freezes instead of returning along his own footprints. That single pause allows another fracture to reach his boots. The ice drops and black water opens around his legs. His body plunges until only his shoulders remain above water. Cold shock forces an explosive from his chest. His breathing becomes fast, shallow, and almost impossible to control. He grabs thin ice, but it breaks beneath his hands. Heavy soaked clothing begins pulling downward around his body. His legs kick without direction beneath the invisible current. Panic demands speed while survival requires controlled movement. Kellan drops flat before moving closer to the opening. Spreading his weight reduces pressure beneath one small area. He pushes the long pole toward Rokan without standing. Rokan misses it because his hands are already losing precision. Kellan shouts one instruction repeatedly through the wind. Breathe first, then turn toward the direction they approached. The ice behind their footprints supported them moments earlier. Rokan presses his forearms onto that stronger edge. He kicks horizontally instead of trying to climb vertically. For 1 second, his chest slides onto solid ice. Then the edge breaks again and throws him backward. The second immersion drains confidence faster than warmth. Kellan extends the pole farther and anchors it beneath his arm. This time, Rokan hooks one elbow over the wood. Kellan crawls backward using knees, elbows, and every remaining grip. Rokan kicks as the pole drags his chest over the edge. Neither hunter stands after Rokan leaves the water. Rokan rolls away along the path of his old footprints. Kellan crawls beside him while watching new cracks spread. Only near the riverbank do they finally reach thicker snow. Rokan tries to stand, but his legs collapse immediately. His wet clothing is now a freezing weight around him. Kellan sees the camp, but it lies beyond a long ridge. Remaining beside the river without shelter is equally dangerous. Kellan chooses a shallow hollow beneath overhanging roots. He blocks the wind with hides, branches, and packed snow. Kellan removes it while shielding him from direct wind. A dry hide from the hunting bundle replaces the soaked layer. The exact clothing and rescue steps remain cautious reconstruction, but protection from wind and moisture is physically essential. Kellan searches their pouch for dry tinder and pyrite. The first sparks land on fibers made damp by rivers. Kellan hides the tinder beneath his cloak and tries again. A tiny ember survives, then spreads into a fragile flame. The fire becomes their shelter's beating heart. Rokan shivers so violently that his teeth strike together. Shivering creates heat but rapidly consumes stored energy. Kellan gives him small pieces of fat-rich dried meat. His speech becomes slow, slurred, and strangely repetitive. He insists he can walk back to camp alone. Kellan recognizes that confidence as another warning. He keeps Rokan seated and warms his torso gradually. Yet Kellan cannot both guard him and summon help. He builds the fire larger and adds green branches for smoke. Then he plants the broken antler upright beside the shelter. Smoke and antler together create a visible search marker. Kiln decides to climb only the nearest low rise. From there, he can shout without abandoning Roken completely. At camp, Nara notices smoke bending against the normal wind. She gathers Ada, Suri, 2 carriers, hides, and firewood. New cracks near the bend reveal what happened before words do. They approach by land rather than crossing the damaged surface. Nara finds Kalan waving from the low ridge. Roken is conscious, but no longer shivering as strongly. Ida understands that fading shivering may mean worsening cold. They replace every damp covering with the driest available hides. More insulation is placed beneath him, not only above. Finding Roken alive is not the same as making him safe. As his skin warms, his core temperature may still continue falling. This dangerous continued cooling is often called afterdrop. Roken suddenly shakes harder during the journey toward camp. He becomes frightened that the rescue is somehow failing. Ida keeps him insulated and watches his breathing and awareness. Nobody forces him to walk across the remaining distance. The carrier reaches shelter after darkness covers the valley. Wet gear is spread away from Roken's sleeping place. Kalan remains nearby, replaying every choice on the river. Guilt searches for certainty after events built from many causes. Nara separates the decisions from the unpredictable ice failure. Before sleeping, the group agrees on stricter river rules. No hunter will leave a tested route for food again. A long pole will always lead any frozen water crossing. People will cross one at a time with wide spacing. Weeks pass before his strength and coordination fully return. He survives without becoming fearless about ice again. Archaeology cannot preserve one exact Ice Age river rescue. Hide needles and hide-working tools support sophisticated winter clothing. Cold water science explains gas, panic, numbness, and impaired thinking. Roken lives because Kalan avoids creating a second victim. Next time, smoke inside the shelter will threaten everyone asleep.